Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sip and Talk. Okay, so you know how sometimes a song gets stuck in your head and it just plays on repeat all day?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that happened to me, but with a feeling.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I had this overwhelming sense of pride after watching a local artist's work kind of go viral.
Wow, that's great.
And it got me thinking about how much does where we're from shape our successes. So that's what we're diving into today.
Okay.
Emotions and innovation, specifically national pride.
That's a big one.
It is, and we've got a stack of sources here covering neuroscience, psychology. We even have some historical examples.
Yeah, we're going to try and untangle how much our national identity impacts innovation.
That's what we're going to dig into today.
Yeah, how national pride can sometimes lead to some pretty intense reactions.
Like the story our listener sent us.
Oh yeah, this one's a good one.
So imagine this. A group of Chinese tourists are visiting Japan.
Sounds like a nice trip.
And they come across a display celebrating Taiwanese-Japanese friendship.
Okay. Seems pretty harmless, right?
You'd think so, but for some of these tourists,
Yeah, it didn't go over so well.
it caused a lot of anger.
They saw it as a betrayal, like a personal attack on their own national identity.
Wow, that's a strong reaction.
Yeah, it is. And to understand why, we need to look at some psychology.
Okay, so let's get into the minds of these tourists.
Well, one concept that's really relevant here is denial fantasy.
Denial fantasy. Okay, so is that like when you just pretend something you don't like doesn't exist?
It's kind of like that, but a little more complex.
Okay, so how does it work?
Basically, it's how people deal with information that clashes with their deeply held beliefs.
So like if someone tells you something that goes against everything you believe in.
Exactly. Instead of changing their beliefs, they might distort or ignore reality to protect themselves.
So they create their own version of the truth.
Yeah, one that fits their existing beliefs, even if it means denying the facts.
And you said this relates to the Chinese tourists in Japan?
Oh, absolutely. The source material gives some interesting examples.
Like what?
Well, some people might try to downplay Japan's technological achievements
Okay.
by claiming that Japanese technology is actually based on stolen Chinese innovations.
So instead of acknowledging Japan's success.
They reframe it as stealing from China.
Interesting. So it allows them to still feel a sense of superiority.
Right, and it's not just about technology. The idea of Taiwanese-Japanese friendship might be dismissed as Taiwan being brainwashed.
Oh, wow. So they're basically rejecting the whole idea.
Yeah, they're holding on to the belief that Taiwan is inherently aligned with mainland China.
Even if that means ignoring evidence to the contrary.
Exactly, and this kind of thinking can be really powerful.
So how does this tie into national pride?
Well, national pride can really amplify these effects, you know.
Because you're so invested in your country's image.
Exactly. Any threat to that image can feel like a personal attack.
And that can lead to some pretty strong emotional responses.
Definitely, even if those responses aren't based in reality.
But hold on a sec. We have to consider the historical context here.
You're right. Historical trauma plays a huge role in shaping people's perspectives.
Events like the Japanese invasion of China left deep scars.
Oh, absolutely. And those experiences shape how people see the world today.
So how do we understand that from a psychological perspective?
Well, that's where cognitive dissonance theory comes in.
Ah, cognitive dissonance. I remember learning about that.
Yeah, it's that feeling of discomfort you get when your actions don't align with your beliefs.
Or when you're presented with information that contradicts what you thought was true.
Exactly. And Festinger, way back in 1957, described this very human tendency to reject information that clashes with our existing beliefs.
So, like, if you believe something really strongly,
and then you're confronted with evidence that proves you wrong,
that creates a kind of mental tension.
Right, and it can be really uncomfortable.
So what do we do when we feel that tension?
Well, we try to find ways to reduce that discomfort.
Makes sense.
Sometimes that means changing our beliefs to align with the new information.
Okay.
But often it means clinging even tighter to our original beliefs.
Even if it means twisting the facts a little.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier to change how we see the facts than to change our beliefs.
Wow. So it's like we're protecting ourselves from uncomfortable truths.
In a way, yeah, and this can be especially true when those beliefs are tied to strong emotions like national pride.
So we've got denial fantasy helping people maintain their preferred version of reality.
Right.
And cognitive dissonance, making it hard to let go of those deeply held beliefs.
Exactly, even when they're challenged.
And it seems like national pride can really amplify these effects.
Oh, absolutely. When you combine strong emotions with these psychological mechanisms, it can be a potent mix.
And that can lead to some pretty intense reactions.
Like the ones we're seeing with the Chinese tourists and the Taiwan-Japan friendship sign.
It's like those reactions weren't just about the sign itself.
No, they were about a whole web of beliefs and emotions tied up with national identity.
Wow, that's pretty deep.
Yeah, it is, and it brings up an interesting question.
What's that?
If these mechanisms can make it so hard to process information objectively,
right,
how can we harness the positive aspects of national pride without falling into the trap of extreme nationalism?
That's a great question, and one we'll definitely explore further after the break.
Stay tuned.
So how do we harness that positive side of national pride? I mean, national pride can be such a powerful force for good.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Think about like historical moments like the U.S. space race or China's 2 bombs, 1 satellite program.
Right.
National pride fueled those achievements.
It can be a huge motivator.
It can create a sense of shared purpose, you know?
Absolutely. It brings people together.
But then you've got those other historical examples.
Well, yeah, the not so great ones.
Where excessive nationalism led to isolation and stagnation.
Yeah, like China closing itself off during the Qing dynasty.
They missed out on the Industrial Revolution because of that.
Exactly. And the Soviet Union's rejection of genetics under Lysenkoism.
That set them back big time.
It's a cautionary tale, you know?
For good or for bad.
Right, for good or for bad. It's a bit of a minefield, though, so buckle up. Okay.
This Wikipedia article on emotions says they're not just feelings.
Right.
But these wild events involving our bodies, thoughts, expressions, the whole shebang.
Yeah, it's complex.
It really is.
And I think one source brings up this comparison about how American babies are encouraged to express emotions more openly than Chinese babies.
Interesting.
Which I thought was interesting as sort of like a hint at how culture shapes this whole symphony that's happening inside us.
But we're all wired for emotion.
Yeah.
But how we express it can be pretty different.
For sure.
Okay, so let's narrow it down now to national pride.
Right.
Which has a very mixed reputation.
Yeah. When you believe your nation has all the answers, you stop being curious about outside ideas. It's like refusing to learn a new language because you think yours is the only one worth speaking.
So too much national pride can create blind spots.
For sure.
And it's not just nations. You think about like that person who always has to be right, no matter what.
Yeah.
And you think about how that stifles creativity.
Absolutely. And this brings us to something that's been a really interesting debate, which is the brain drain debate.
Okay.
So how do we measure where someone's success truly originated?
Okay.
So, for example, take Chinese scientists in the U.S. Is their success due to their Chinese education or the environment that they're currently in?
Well, it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you have a chef who's trained in one country.
Okay.
Using ingredients from another country.
Right.
And they perfect their dish in a third country.
Yeah, where's the magic from?
Yeah. Where does the magic come from?
Right. It highlights how everything is sort of this interplay of foundation, resources, environment. And some sources argue for the importance of academic freedom, access to cutting-edge resources.
Okay.
And they suggest that these things are really key for innovation to thrive.
So a nurturing environment is crucial.
Yeah.
But then you have countries who are actively trying to attract talent back.
Right.
It's like brain gain.
Yeah, brain gain instead of brain drain.
Right. So using national pride this time as a lure.
Fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It shows how this emotion can either push talent away or draw it in, depending on how it's wielded.
Exactly.
Okay, speaking of powerful forces, the sources also dive into how history, especially like traumatic events, can really shape international relations.
Yeah, they can have long-lasting impacts for sure.
Oh yeah, things get really heavy here. You know, the Holocaust, the Korean comfort women issue, China's anti-Japanese sentiment. These events carry so much emotional weight, even decades later.
Absolutely. It's like these wounds are still open, you know, influencing policies, global interaction. It makes you think, how do we balance remembering the past with moving forward?
That's a really good question. How do we do that?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. You know, it's like, how do we find that balance between honoring the past but not letting it completely dictate our present and future?
Right. And the sources touch on how holding on to those past grievances can actually prevent us from moving forward.
Right. It can hinder progress and cooperation.
Exactly. And it can create this sort of us versus them mentality.
Totally.
which makes it hard to find common ground.
And it's like that saying, isn't it?
What's that?
Holding onto a hot coal thinking you're hurting the other person.
Oh, yeah.
But really you're the one getting burned.
Yeah, we're the ones that end up suffering in the end.
So how do we move forward? How do we honor the past without letting it dictate the future?
Well, it takes a conscious effort, I think, to acknowledge the past suffering and learn from it.
Right.
But then also focus on building a better future.
Right. So you can't change what happened, but you can choose how you respond to it.
Exactly.
Okay, well, speaking of shaping narratives, let's talk about propaganda.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other can of worms.
It really is.
It is.
It's everywhere these days.
It is. And the sources point out how governments especially use propaganda to manipulate public opinion.
Right.
And to reinforce certain emotions.
It's scary how easy it is to get sucked into those information bubbles.
Is.
Where you only see things that confirm your existing beliefs.
Yeah, and the examples they give are pretty striking.
Like what?
Well, they talk about North Korea's claims of technological superiority.
Right.
And they also talk about how Russia portrays the West as this enemy.
Right.
And it's all about using propaganda to create this fear and distrust.
It's like they're playing with our emotions
to
get what they want. If we could acknowledge the complexities of national pride.
The good and the bad. So we've been talking about national pride and how it can be this powerful force, but also have some downsides.
Yeah, real double-edged sword.
Exactly. And the question is, how do we make sure our own sense of national identity doesn't become a barrier to progress and understanding,
Right. How do we keep that pride healthy?
That's the big question. And I think our deep dive has given us some good insights.
Oh, definitely. We've talked about some key psychological mechanisms. Denial fantasy, cognitive dissonance, the whole deal. But emotions aren't always a bad thing, are they?
Oh, definitely not.
No.
This brings us to this really fascinating concept of emotional intelligence, or EQ.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, and the sources talk about how being in tune with your own emotions and the emotions of others is crucial for innovation.
So it's not just about being like a brilliant scientist or inventor. You also need to understand people.
You need to understand how people feel, how to work together effectively.
It's about empathy and communication.
Exactly.
And being able to kind of navigate all those complex social dynamics.
Right, and think about it. Really successful teams, they're usually made up of people who are both talented and emotionally intelligent.
Right. It's like you can have the best idea in the world, but if you can't communicate it and get people on board,
it goes nowhere.
It goes nowhere.
Right?
So EQ is kind of like the secret sauce of innovation.
Yeah, you could say that.
Interesting.
And it actually ties back to what we were talking about earlier with national pride.
Okay.
Because when it's channeled in a positive way, that shared sense of purpose can inspire amazing collaboration.
Like what?
Well, I mean, think about the moon landing or the development of those life-saving vaccines.
Yeah.
Those were huge achievements.
There were.
That were fueled by both scientific brilliance and a really profound sense of national pride.
That's true. It's like that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love that.
And maybe that healthy dose of national pride is what helps us go far together.
And it's important to remember this stuff isn't just theory.
Yeah, this applies to everyone.
Absolutely, no matter where you're from or what you believe.
So let's think about our own experiences for a minute.
Okay.
Have you ever noticed yourself getting defensive when someone criticizes your country?
Or maybe brushing off news that paints your nation in a negative light?
Those are some telltale signs, right?
Yeah, it could be those mechanisms at play, denial fantasy or cognitive dissonance.
And hey, it's okay to feel that way sometimes.
We all do. It's human nature.
But the important thing is to be aware of it,
Awareness is key.
So we can start challenging our own biases.
And be open to different perspectives.
Because being open to different viewpoints doesn't mean you have to abandon your own beliefs.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that there are many ways of seeing the world.
And those different viewpoints can actually enrich our understanding.
It's like adding more colors to your palette.
I like that you can still love your favorite color. But why limit yourself to just one shade?
Exactly. Having more colors lets you create something even more beautiful.
And remember those historical examples we talked about?
The countries that embraced collaboration and new ideas.
Those are the ones that really thrived.
They understood that national pride doesn't have to mean shutting out the world.
It can actually drive connection and innovation.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
So as we wrap up today, keep these ideas in mind.
Challenge yourself to think critically.
Be willing to engage in those tough conversations.
And remember that a healthy sense of national pride can be a beautiful thing.
It really can. But we have to be mindful of its potential pitfalls.
and make sure it's a force for good in the world.
Well said. This deep dive has given us all a lot to think about.
It has. And I hope it's inspired you to dive deeper into these topics.
Remember, it's all about learning and growing.
And understanding the complexities of the world around us.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. And until next time, keep those brains buzzing. I just want to give another shout out to Micky from Mickytolife. His channel is a treasure trove of inspiration, and he's a huge Sip&Talk fan.
Absolutely. Make sure to check him out and maybe even share your awesome podcast intro with him once you've created it.